The house of our lies, the marriage that was never meant to be. If you believe love only begins with honesty, stay until the end. Because sometimes, a lie that starts in desperation can reveal a truth deeper than any vow. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories of love, courage, and redemption. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and thank you so much for being here. Now let us return to our main character. The sky above Malibu was the color of steel, heavy with the scent of salt and rain. Hana Kim stood at the edge of her driveway, her canvas bag slipping from her shoulder, paintbrushes scattering across the wet concrete. Her heart froze as she read the word nailed to the white fence in red letters. Sold. Inside the gate, a man in a tailored gray coat was signing papers beside a sleek black car. Reporters lingered behind the fence, murmuring like restless waves. Hana stepped forward, rain catching in her hair. "Excuse me," she said, voice trembling. "This is my house." "Lemse." The man did not look up. His signature flowed smoothly across the page. Only when the pen clicked shut did he glance her way. His eyes were dark, unreadable, the kind that could command silence on a movie set. "It was your house," he said quietly. "Now it is mine. You cannot just buy someone's life," she snapped. "You do not even know what this place means." He sighed, turning to the agents who hovered near the porch. "Please give us a moment." When they left, he faced her again, studying the fury in her eyes. "I am Ethan Lee," he said, his tone professional, almost bored. "I am sure you have read the headlines. I am tired of them. I needed somewhere private. Your friends sold it fair and square." "My friends tricked me," Hana said, the words catching in her throat. "They took everything. My savings, my work, my home." Ethan looked away, the rain beginning to fall harder, drumming against the car roof. For a second, something human flickered in his expression, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "I cannot change what is done," he said. "But if you want this house so badly, there might be another way." She frowned, uncertain if she had heard him correctly. "Another way?" He stepped closer, his voice low. "I need a wife, temporarily, for 6 months, purely contractual. You need a roof. I need an image that says I am settled and safe for the studio. It would solve both our problems." Lo, the wind whipped between them, carrying the faint click of cameras in the distance. Hana stared, half in disbelief, half in anger. "You are out of your mind," she whispered. "Maybe," Ethan said. "But the offer stands." He reached into his pocket and held out a small silver key. "Think of it as temporary shelter, until you find something real." She looked at the key glinting in his palm, her reflection tiny and distorted in the metal. The ocean roared behind them. For a moment, she wanted to throw the key into the waves, to end the conversation and walk away. But she had nowhere else to go. The silence stretched. The only sound was the surf, relentless and cold. Finally, Hana lifted her chin, eyes steady. "If I agree, there will be rules," she said. "You will not sell this house until our contract ends." Ethan's mouth curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Then it is a deal, Mrs. Lee." He dropped the key into her hand. It felt heavier than metal, like a decision that would change everything. As the rain blurred the line between sea and sky, Hana stood on the threshold of a house that no longer belonged to her, holding the one thing she never expected from a stranger: a chance to stay. The next morning, the ocean was quiet again, its rhythm steady against the cliffs. Inside the wide glass house, sunlight spilled across the marble floor, catching on the reflection of Hana's small suitcase beside the door. She stood in the living room, wearing a borrowed sweater, staring at the white contract spread across the kitchen counter. The letters were sharp and clean, typed in perfect legal language. She had read it twice already, but her eyes still stopped at the same line. "This marriage is not to be interpreted as emotional or romantic in nature." Ethan walked in from the balcony, holding 2 mugs of coffee. His posture was precise, every movement deliberate. He set one mug near her elbow without meeting her gaze. "Sign it when you are ready," he said. "Our lawyer will file it this afternoon. The press release goes out tomorrow." "Press release," she repeated, her voice small. "So the whole world will know you are married to a stranger." "Not a stranger," he corrected softly. "A solution." Hana looked up sharply. "And what am I solving for you?" Ethan took a slow sip of coffee, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "My reputation. The studio has been looking for any reason to replace me. They want a stable image. A wife gives them that. And what do I get? He turned back toward her. A place to live. A break from the storm. Hana laughed once. A quiet, tired sound. So we both get to pretend. Ethan's face softened, but his tone remained even. Pretending is an art. You will learn fast. She hesitated, then took the pen and signed her name with a slow, deliberate stroke. For a second, the sound of the pen against paper felt louder than the sea. Ethan reached for the document, glanced at the signature, and nodded once. "Welcome to the performance," he said. Later that day, a stylist arrived with racks of clothes, a makeup artist, and a publicist named Lauren, who spoke faster than the wind. They measured Hana's hair, her shoes, her tone of voice. "Smile with your eyes," Lauren instructed. "Do not speak unless someone asks. The narrative is simple. You met through mutual friends and fell in love quietly. Keep it clean." Ethan watched from the stairs, half amused, half guarded. When they left, Hana sat on the edge of the sofa, surrounded by silk dresses and high heels she could never afford. "I am not built for this," she murmured. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "Neither am I. But here we are." Days turned into a rhythm neither of them expected. In the mornings, she painted by the wide kitchen window, the smell of turpentine drifting through the hall. In the evenings, he rehearsed scripts in the study, his voice echoing through the house. They rarely spoke more than necessary, but their silences grew softer. One night, she found him asleep on the couch, the script fallen to the floor. For the first time, he looked human, not untouchable. She covered him with a blanket and went back to her room, unsure why her heart would not slow down. By the end of the first week, photographers had already caught sight of them together at the farmer's market. Ethan played his role perfectly, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, his smile gentle and practiced. But when a camera flash startled her, he leaned close and whispered, "Breathe. You are doing fine." Talma. It was such a simple sentence, yet it lingered in her chest long after the photographers disappeared. That night, Hana stood on the balcony, the Pacific stretching endless and dark. She traced the edge of the silver key that still hung around her neck. The house was no longer empty, but it did not yet feel like home. Behind her, Ethan's voice broke the silence. "Do you regret it?" She turned, startled. He stood in the doorway, half lit by the warm glow from inside. "Every decision feels like a mistake until it turns into something else," she said quietly. He smiled faintly, the kind that did not reach his eyes. "Then let us hope this one turns into something good." For a moment, they simply stood there, the sound of the waves filling the space between them. The distance was still there, but it had begun to breathe. The first real test of their strange arrangement arrived sooner than expected. By the second month, the tabloids had already named Hana the quiet miracle. Magazines ran photographs of her in simple linen dresses, standing beside Ethan at charity events, her calm presence softening his once arrogant image. The studio executives were pleased. The world believed in their story. Only the two people inside it knew it was not true. One Friday morning, Hana found Ethan in the study, surrounded by newspapers. Headlines screamed his name beside hers. "Ethan Lee's secret marriage restores his reputation. The star and the artist who saved him." She set a cup of tea near his hand. "You should stop reading those," she said gently. He folded the paper with a sigh. "They like the illusion. It sells better than truth." "You sound tired of it already." "I am." He paused, glancing at her. "But the studio just offered me another film. They said it is because of you." "Because of me?" "They think you make me human," he said quietly. Hana did not know what to say. She looked out the window, watching the waves slide against the rocks below. The idea that she could make him anything felt impossible. Yet for the first time, she wondered if she had begun to matter to him in ways neither of them intended. That evening, Lauren arrived with a new list of events. "The gala at the Marlowe Hotel," she announced. "You will attend as a couple. Smile, pose, and let them believe what they want." Salba. The night of the gala shimmered with golden light and soft music. Hana wore a silver gown that brushed the floor like liquid moonlight. As they stepped onto the carpet, camera flashes burst around them like summer lightning. Ethan leaned close enough for her to hear him over the noise. "Remember, keep your head high. You belong here as much as anyone." She nodded, clutching his arm. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers threw rainbows across the ceiling. For a moment, the scene looked almost magical. But magic rarely lasts. Near the center of the room, a reporter called out a question that silenced the air. "Ethan, how does it feel to marry for convenience rather than love?" The words cut through the music. Hana froze. Ethan's jaw tightened. Every camera pointed toward them. Then, without hesitation, He turned to her, his hand finding hers. "You are mistaken," he said calmly, facing the crowd. "There is nothing convenient about this." "Lo Ting?" He looked at Hana, his expression unreadable. "She is my wife. She is the only truth I have left." For a heartbeat, the room was still. Then flashes exploded again, brighter, louder. The moment was everywhere by morning. Every magazine printed the same photograph, Ethan's hand over hers, the soft light catching her astonished face. When Hana saw the cover, her heart twisted. It was supposed to be pretend, yet his words replayed in her head like a secret confession. "The only truth I have left." Later that day, she found him outside on the balcony, staring at the horizon. "You did not have to say that," she said softly. He did not look away from the sea. "If I had not, they would have eaten us alive." "Us?" He turned, eyes tired but sincere. "Yes, us. Like it or not, we are in this together." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the ocean filled the silence between them. That night, Hana returned to her small corner of the house, the studio room he had let her turn into an art space. Her latest painting stood half-finished, the outline of the same house they lived in, surrounded by storm clouds. Without thinking, she picked up the brush and began to paint, light breaking through them. She did not know why she did it, only that it felt right. From the doorway, unseen, Ethan watched her. The glow from the lamp traced gold across her face. For the first time since their contract began, he felt the faint, unfamiliar pull of peace. Outside, the wind carried the scent of the ocean through the open window. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cried, and for the briefest moment, the house that had started as a lie felt almost alive. Weeks passed, and the quiet rhythm between them settled into something that neither of them could name. The media storm slowly faded. The reporters found new stories, and for the first time in months, the house felt still. Hana painted more often, and Ethan stopped correcting her when she left the windows open to let the ocean air in. One morning, he found her asleep at her easel, her cheek resting on her arm, a smear of blue paint across her wrist. He stood in the doorway, watching her breathe. The sunlight spilled through the curtains, catching the dust in the air like tiny sparks. For a moment, he imagined what it might feel like if this were real, if the marriage was not a performance, if mornings like this could last. He quietly placed a blanket over her shoulders and walked away before she could wake. Later that week, Lauren called again. "There is another event," she said, "an awards dinner. You both need to attend. Bring warmth and a good story." Ethan sighed but agreed. When the night came, Hana wore a dark emerald dress that made her eyes seem brighter under the chandeliers. They stood side by side at the entrance of the hotel, posing for photographs that would appear on every entertainment site by morning. Inside, the crowd shimmered with fame and money. Ethan was surrounded by producers and actors, the air thick with compliments and champagne. Hana sat quietly beside him, smiling when required, her hands folded in her lap. When a reporter approached and asked about her paintings, Ethan's expression softened. "She paints the ocean outside our house," he said, his tone quieter than before. "She says every wave has its own story." The reporter smiled. "So, you two actually live together? No separate wings or hidden secrets?" Ethan laughed lightly. "One kitchen, one roof. That is all it takes to make a home." After the interview, they stepped out to the terrace to escape the noise. The night air was cool and sharp, filled with the distant hum of traffic. Hana leaned on the railing, looking at the lights reflected on the water below. "Do you ever miss your old life?" she asked softly. Ethan turned to her. "Which one? The one before fame or before this contract?" "Both." He was quiet for a moment. "I used to think I wanted control. To choose every headline, every scene. But control does not mean peace. I have had everything except that." Chapter. Hana looked at him, hearing a tremor in his voice she had never noticed before. "You could still find it." He shook his head. "Peace is for people who are not watched by 1,000 cameras." "Then stop performing," she said, "even when they are watching." Ethan looked at her then, really looked. There was something unguarded in her face, something honest. The moment held longer than it should have. A sudden gust of wind lifted a strand of her hair across his cheek. Neither of them moved. For a heartbeat, the noise from the ballroom faded until all that remained was the pulse of the ocean below. He stepped back first, breaking the spell. "We should go inside." "Yes," she said, though her voice sounded far away. That night, back at the house, neither could sleep. Hana sat by the window with her sketchbook, drawing without thinking. Ethan walked the halls, his reflection following him in the glass. When their paths crossed in the kitchen at midnight, they both froze, startled. "You are awake too," she said. "I could ask the same," he replied. She smiled faintly. You do not look like the man on screen when it is this quiet. And you do not look like someone pretending to be my wife. They stood in silence, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Then Hana looked down at her bare feet and whispered, maybe we are both pretending less than we think. Ethan watched her walk away, her words echoing in the dim light. Upstairs, Hana placed her sketchbook on the nightstand. The drawing showed two silhouettes under the same roof, divided by a thin line of light. She closed it slowly, unsure which side of that line she truly belonged to anymore. The following week brought a storm that shook the coast. Waves crashed against the rocks, and rain battered the tall glass walls of the house. Inside, Hana sat on the couch, watching the weather twist the horizon into gray mist. Ethan paced nearby, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking sharply to someone from the studio. When he ended the call, he looked drained. They are pushing the film premiere forward. The press tour starts next week. That sounds good, she said quietly. It is not, he replied. They want to invite my wife to the opening. They want us to appear in love. Hana stared at him. You agreed to this. You knew what they expected. I agreed to pretend, he said. But lately I do not know where the act ends. His words hung in the air, heavy and unfinished. Hana turned toward the rain-smeared window, unsure how to respond. That night, the storm grew wilder. Thunder rolled through the sky, shaking the glass panes. Ethan found Hana in her art studio, standing before a blank canvas, the lights flickering. She looked over her shoulder as he entered. You should be asleep, he said. So should you. The power cut out. The room fell into darkness, save for the glow of a single candle flickering near the windowsill. Hana exhaled, laughing softly. Looks like the universe is tired of all the pretending, too. Ethan smiled faintly, stepping closer. You are not afraid of storms? I used to be, she admitted. But sometimes the noise outside makes the silence inside feel less lonely. They stood there for a moment, listening to the wind. The candlelight trembled across the walls. He noticed a painting beside the easel unfinished, but different from her usual work. It showed a man standing in front of the same house they lived in, his face turned toward the sea. Is that supposed to be me? He asked. Hana hesitated. Maybe, or maybe it is just someone learning how to stay. Ethan moved closer, his voice softer now. I have not stayed anywhere this long in years. Her eyes met his. Then maybe this place is changing you? He let out a quiet laugh. Or maybe you are. True. The air between them tightened, the space suddenly fragile. The sound of the ocean filled the silence where words no longer fit. Ethan reached for the candle to steady it as the wind blew harder. His hand brushed hers, and neither of them pulled away. For a breath, it felt as if the storm had stopped outside, leaving only the sound of two hearts trying to find the same rhythm. When the lights finally returned, Hana blinked, stepping back quickly. You should get some sleep, she said, her voice too calm. Ethan nodded, but neither moved. She picked up the candle and blew it out. Darkness settled again, gentle this time. The next morning, sunlight flooded the house as if the storm had never happened. Ethan found Hana on the porch, painting with a mug of coffee beside her. She looked peaceful, almost happy. Did you sleep? He asked. A little, she said. You? He smiled faintly. Not much. Arthas tie. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was familiar, like the sound of the waves returning to the shore. Later that afternoon, a message arrived from Lauren. The gala photographs had been published. One image stood out. Ethan and Hana, standing close together on the terrace, the city lights behind them. The caption read, When love looks real enough to believe. Hana stared at the screen for a long time. Maybe, she thought, the caption was not entirely wrong. Inside the house, the same candle from the night before sat on the table. Its wax had hardened into a soft curve, frozen in the shape of the wind that once threatened to blow it out. The film premiere arrived on a clear Friday evening. The city glowed beneath 1,000 lights, the kind that made everything appear more perfect than it really was. Ethan adjusted his tie in the car window's reflection while Hana watched from the seat beside him, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The traffic moved slowly, every turn bringing them closer to the red carpet where the world would be waiting. When the car stopped, the sound of the crowd washed in like a tide flashes, voices, and music. Ethan stepped out first, then turned back, offering his hand. Are you ready? Do I have a choice? She said softly, but she took his hand anyway. The cameras exploded as they walked forward together. For a moment, they looked exactly like what everyone wanted them to be, a perfect couple, smiling in the glow of fame. Ethan kept his arm around her waist. whispering small directions she could barely hear. Look left. Smile there. Good. Inside the theater, the noise faded. The premiere began, and Ethan's face appeared on the giant screen. Hana sat beside him, half lost in the story, half lost in the strange feeling that she was living a different movie altogether, one that had never been written. After the film ended, the applause was thunderous. They mingled among producers and guests, each congratulating Ethan on his comeback. Hana stood slightly behind him, her polite smile fixed in place. Then a voice she recognized from her past sliced through the chatter. Well, if it is not Hana Kim. She turned. It was Daniel Cho, an art curator who once promised to feature her work before selling her paintings without permission. He smiled too widely. So this is what success looks like. A millionaire's wife. Ethan's eyes flicked toward them. Do you know him? Not anymore, Hana replied, keeping her voice steady. Daniel laughed softly. Careful, Ethan. Artists like her fall in love with the lifestyle faster than with the man. The insult stung more than she expected. Before she could speak, Ethan stepped forward, his tone calm but sharp. Then you do not know her at all. She had nothing when I met her, and she still refused to take a cent that was not hers. Daniel blinked, caught off guard, and walked away without another word. Hana looked up at Ethan, her eyes wide. You did not have to defend me. Yes, I did, he said simply. The car ride home was quiet, the kind of silence that said more than words. When they reached the house, Hana stopped at the door. Why did you say that? He looked at her, tired but honest. Because it was true. She hesitated, then whispered, And what else is true, Ethan? He did not answer. Instead, he stepped closer, the tension between them heavy with everything unsaid. You should rest, he said finally, his voice low. Hana nodded and walked inside, but her pulse did not slow until long after she closed her bedroom door. Later that night, she found herself unable to sleep. She walked through the quiet halls until she reached the living room. Ethan was there, sitting on the couch, his suit jacket off, his tie undone. He looked up as she entered. You are still awake, he said. So are you. He smiled faintly. I am thinking about how strange this all is. I married a stranger to save my image, and somehow, she has become the only person I trust. The words hung in the air like a confession. Hana stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Then stop calling it a contract. Ethan looked at her, his expression unreadable. It started as one. Maybe, she said, but I do not think it still is. He did not move, but his eyes softened. The room felt smaller, quieter, almost safe. For the first time, neither of them was pretending. Outside, the waves broke softly against the shore, and the lights of the city shimmered through the glass. The lie that had built their house was beginning to crumble, and underneath it something real was finally taking shape. The calm that had settled between them did not last. Within days of the premiere, the headlines shifted again. What began as admiration turned into suspicion. Someone had leaked fragments of their marriage contract to the press. The words, 6 months agreement, appeared across every gossip site in bold letters. When Hana opened her phone that morning, her breath caught. A photograph of the contract was on the front page of a celebrity blog, the signature lines clear and undeniable. The caption read, Love for sale? Ethan Lee's marriage exposed as publicity stunt. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. The comments were brutal. He married an artist to fix his image. She sold herself for fame. It was all fake. Ethan found her sitting at the kitchen counter, the phone face down beside her coffee cup. You saw it, he said quietly. She did not answer. Did you leak it? The question hit him like a slap. No, why would I? Because it makes you the victim, she said, her voice breaking. The poor actor betrayed by a woman who used him. Ethan's face hardened. You think I would do that to you? I do not know what to think anymore, she said. Their argument built like the storm outside. Words collided, louder and sharper until they both fell silent, the weight of what had been broken filling the room. I trusted you, Hana whispered. For the first time in a long time, I thought something here was real. Ethan stepped forward, regret flashing in his eyes. It was real, he said. At least for me. But she was already walking away. Then you should have protected it better. That night, the house that once felt alive grew silent again. Hana packed a small suitcase and left before sunrise. The only thing she took with her was her sketchbook and the silver key that had started everything. When Ethan woke, the space beside the easel was empty. Her paintings were gone from the walls, her laughter erased from the rooms. He found the contract on the kitchen counter, torn clean down the middle. By afternoon, the paparazzi were stationed outside the gates. Questions poured through the intercom. Is it true the marriage was fake? Did she leave you? Was it all an act? Ethan did not answer any of them. Instead, he closed the curtains and sat alone in the quiet. For the first time, the house felt too large, too hollow. Over the next few days, the truth unraveled. Lauren called to say the studio was furious, threatening to terminate his new contract. The investors wanted statements, apologies, proof of remorse. But Ethan refused to speak publicly. "What do you want me to say?" he told Lauren. "That I never cared about her? That it was just business? That would be the biggest lie of all. Call no." Meanwhile, Hana stayed in a small apartment downtown, the kind of place where the walls were thin and the view was nothing but rooftops. She tried to paint, but every brushstroke turned into the outline of the house she had left behind. A week later, an envelope arrived under her door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single note written in Ethan's familiar handwriting. "I did not betray you. I will prove it. Please come to the gallery on Saturday. Tway." Hana stared at the letter for a long time, torn between anger and the ache that still lingered in her chest. She wanted to ignore it. She wanted to forget. But part of her needed to know the truth. Outside, the city lights flickered through the rain, and for the first time since she left, she wondered if some houses were not meant to be escaped from, but rebuilt. Somewhere across the coast, Ethan stood in the empty living room, looking at the space where her paintings once hung. The house was silent, but the echo of her voice still filled it. He whispered into the emptiness, "Wait for me, Hana. I am not done telling our story." Saturday arrived under a gray sky, heavy with the promise of rain. Hana stood outside the small downtown gallery, clutching the silver key in her hand. The note in her pocket felt like a question she was not ready to answer. She had almost turned back twice, but something curiosity, or perhaps the part of her heart that still believed him, kept her there. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paint and wood varnish. A banner hung across the entrance. "The House That Breathes," a joint exhibition by Ethan Lee and Hana Kim. Her breath caught. She had never agreed to share her name in any exhibition. But there it was, printed in clean black letters beside his. A few guests milled around, murmuring softly. At the center of the room stood a single large painting covered by a white cloth. Ethan appeared from behind the crowd, wearing a simple gray suit, no cameras, no entourage. When he saw her, his expression softened. "You came." "I almost did not," Hana replied. "I know," he said, "but I needed you to see this before the world did." He nodded to the gallery manager, who pulled away the cloth. The crowd fell silent. The painting beneath was enormous, larger than anything she had ever painted. It showed the house on the cliff, the one that had been theirs, but it was not empty. Through the open windows, golden light poured out, illuminating two small figures inside, a man holding a key and a woman standing by a canvas. At the bottom corner was a signature written in both their hands, E.L. and H.K. Hana pressed a hand to her mouth. "You finished it," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "We did. I only added what was missing, the light." "Oda." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I traced where the leak came from. It was not me. Someone from the studio hacked my email. They wanted to end the contract before I could walk away on my own terms." She turned to him, searching his face for the lie that never came. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I want to end the contract myself," he said. "But not the way it was written. I want to end the lie, not us." "Algu." For a long moment, the noise of the room disappeared. Hana's eyes filled, though she blinked them clear. "You said the house was yours?" she said softly. "It was never mine," Ethan replied. "It was always ours. You made it feel like home." He reached into his pocket and held out the same folded piece of paper, the torn contract she had left behind. Someone had carefully taped it together. Across the top, in bold handwriting, a new line had been added: amendment. Both parties agree to stay not by obligation, but by choice. Gasps rippled through the small audience as cameras from the local press began to click. But Ethan did not turn away. He took Hana's hand in his and said clearly, "No more pretending. I did not marry you for the headlines. I fell in love with the woman who painted light into my walls." Tears blurred her vision, but she managed to smile. "You are terrible at keeping secrets," she said. "Then maybe it is time to live without any," he answered. The crowd began to applaud, the sound rising like waves. Hana looked at the painting again, seeing it differently now, not as the memory of something lost, but as the beginning of something honest. When the applause quieted, Ethan leaned closer and whispered, Will you come back home? She hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded. Only if you promise to leave the windows open this time. Bombsley. I will, he said, smiling. The house finally knows how to breathe. Outside, the rain began to fall, soft and steady. As they stepped out together, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement, turning every puddle into a small mirror of gold. For the first time since the day they met, the world was not watching a performance. It was witnessing the truth. A month later, the house on the cliff was alive again. The salt wind swept through its open windows, carrying the smell of the ocean and wet pine. Hana stood in the garden with her hands covered in soil, planting small white lilies along the path that led to the porch. Inside, music drifted softly from the record player, Ethan's voice humming along under his breath. For the first time, the place did not feel like a movie set. It felt lived in. When Ethan stepped outside, he carried 2 mugs of coffee and the silver key, now strung on a chain around his neck. The lilies look perfect, he said. They belong here. So do we, she replied, wiping her hands. He smiled. I still cannot believe you came back. You did not leave me much of a choice, she teased gently. You hung our names on a gallery wall. I needed to show you that the story was never about a contract, he said. It was about a home. Comes up. Hana looked toward the ocean. The same waves that once sounded lonely now seemed to sing. Do you think people will ever stop asking if we faked everything? Ethan laughed quietly. Let them ask. We do not owe the world proof of what is real. Later that evening, the sun dipped low, spilling orange light across the water. The two of them stood on the porch as the sky deepened into gold. Ethan reached into his pocket and took out a small box. Hana's breath caught. What is that? He opened it, revealing a simple silver ring. The first time I gave you a key, he said softly. It was an escape. This time it is a promise. No contracts, no conditions, only choice. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. You really think we can build something real out of something that started as a lie? Ethan took her hand and placed the ring in her palm. We already did. We just needed to stop pretending long enough to see it. Tease 1. She closed her fingers around the ring, the weight of it steady and certain. Then yes, she whispered. I will stay. He smiled, slipping the ring onto her finger. The waves crashed below like applause. The silver key around his neck glinted once in the fading light, catching the last reflection of the sun before the world turned soft and blue. Inside, on the mantel above the fireplace, stood the painting from the gallery, The House That Breathes. The golden light within it seemed almost alive, as if the brushstrokes themselves remembered every storm, every silence, every fragile beginning that brought them here. Ethan wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. Do you remember what you said that first day? He asked. That you wanted to stay, but only if it was real. She nodded. And now? He looked out toward the horizon, where the sea met the fading sky. Now it is real. Y'all. The record ended, leaving only the hum of the wind and the rhythmic sound of the waves below. Hana leaned her head against his chest. The house finally feels like home. Ethan kissed the top of her hair, his voice quiet but steady. Because this time, it is. Yendri Kraz. As the last light disappeared beyond the cliffs, the house stood glowing against the dark, no longer a monument to a lie, but to the truth that grew from it, the truth that love, when chosen freely, can turn even a contract into forever.